Well, hello. Oh, hey. Hello there. Hey, welcome to Streaming Star Wars. You know, I'm nothing but pro, if nothing else. Welcome to Streaming Star Wars. I'm Pete Fletcher. I'm your host with my co-host, Nick Milkey. Nick, how you doing, my friend?
Man, I am so excited to be here. It has been a crazy busy week at work. It has been a crazy busy week in my house. School starts soon. I've got 4 girls who are all sorting out first grade, 4th grade, 9th grade. That things are bananas over here. But one of the things that has been driving me through this week was this show tonight, getting a chance to hang out with our amazing guest and do what we love to do on Friday night, which is hang out with our friends and talk about Star Wars.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every Friday night, we come to you live on our YouTube channel. If you're with us right now, thank you so much for hanging out. And if you're listening on the replay on Monday morning, hope you enjoy the show. We love doing this. So we call this sort of like sports radio for Star Wars nerds. So thanks for hanging out. We're going to hit some of the topics of the day, and we do have an amazing guest this evening. And so why don't we say hello to our people hanging out with us, do our little toast, do some news, and then bring in our guest.
Absolutely. Actually, before we do that, yes, I want to hit a very important piece of housekeeping. And this is the one that we're not doing shirts tonight. We're not doing all the, Patreon and all that stuff. We'll save it for another day. Pete, can we talk about Podathon for just a moment?
We sure can.
Podathon, September 17th, 2022. It is the 3rd annual Podathon. It is our day-long charity podcast stream, and we're raising money again for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Last year, we raised over $8,200. This year, we have set the goal at $10,000. I think you said the other day, we're already at $600.
We already have $600 donated. You can donate
a month and a half away.
Yep.
But here's what we want to talk about just for a quick minute. At this point, we've got 15 amazing shows that are going to be with us throughout the course of that entire day on Saturday, September 17th, raising this money for Make-A-Wish. And we've got a meeting on Tuesday with all of our shows and hosts and friends that are participating and helping us out. Yep. There's going to be some big news coming in the very short, near future, maybe even later this week. All these shows are hard at work getting an amazing guests, and there's some really unbelievable things in the works for Podathon this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm just pumped about it.
I would urge everybody to follow at the Podathon on either Twitter or Instagram, or go to thepodathon.com to keep up with everything that's happening. There's going to be some news next week that I still am not even sure if it's real, because it's so amazing. But I don't want to over tease it, but I think it'll speak for itself next week. So be prepared for some news coming next week on Podathon. You can donate today. For every $5 you donate, you have an opportunity to win some amazing prizes. We're getting things from publishers. We're getting things from Regal Robot. We're getting things from fellow fans. We may be getting, I'm pretty sure we're getting an exclusive package from a particular filmmaking company that you may have heard of in California.
And we got one today. I texted you and Scotty about.
Yes.
If you look up on Instagram, Planetecture, like Planet Architecture, Planetecture is an artist over in the UK that I happened to find on Instagram and sent a message, and they are going to donate 6 prints from their artwork, which is absolutely amazing. It's beautiful stuff. It's a style that I love. It's simple. It's planetary architecture, which is why the name, obviously. It's really cool art. So they've offered to donate 6 of their prints to go towards other raffle prizes. So tons of prizes, tons of fun. Again, just mind-blowing stuff that's going to be happening in September, all for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Those donation links are directly related to Make-A-Wish, so every penny goes directly to them.
Yep.
I'm just pumped about it. So I definitely wanted to hit that before we get into this. But speaking of friends, speaking of charity, speaking of amazing, good people, our live chat is kicking already. I see Raven, I see Brian, I see JD, I see Matthew, I see Dale, Jeff, usual suspects. Everybody's hanging out. I know we've got some more people coming in soon. Thank you for being here. Thank you for always hanging out with us on a Friday night, enjoying what we do, being a part of our family. We want to raise a toast to you. So we're getting ready to do that. I did tell Pete I wanted to take the very briefest of personal privileges tonight. My Aunt Nancy retired from her job today after years and years and years of working. And my Aunt Nancy is one of the, she was the cool aunt. She was the one that taught us about Indiana Jones. She loved sci-fi and Star Wars. She taught me about beer as I got older. Like, she was just that cool aunt, a huge influence in my life, somebody that I love dearly. And so my Aunt Nancy retired today after years of working in the healthcare industry and putting in a lot of work. So I wanted to raise my mug to her. Actually, this is from the Tipping Point, a local establishment here in Alabama that she loves. So cheers to you. I love you. Thanks for everything that you do. And happy Star Wars.
Happy Star Wars. Awesome. Well, Nick, it's not a heavy news week, but there is some news this week. So why don't we get to that? And then we'll bring in our amazing guest. We have with us after the news, Mr. Kyle Newman, who you may know from a little movie that us Star Wars fans tend to love a lot, Fanboys, and a new movie called One Up. But we'll bring him in right after the news. So, Nick, if you're ready to read the news, let's do this.
Let's go. Circles might be expanding, gamers keep waiting, and Cassian speaks out. Give us 5 minutes and we'll give you the galaxy. Another week, another flood of news, rumors, clickbait, and conversation. I am Nick Milkey, and welcome to Disturbances in the Force. All the links to the original sources can be found in the notes, and I encourage you to check them out. Earlier this week, it was discovered that Lucasfilm filed 3 new trademarks: the Great Circle, the Galactic Circle, and Circle of Resistance. While none of these trademarks are explicitly stated as being Star Wars related, the terms used on the second and third trademarks include terms commonly associated with the franchise. All 3 trademarks are classified under the 9 and 41 labels. Previous Lucasfilm trademarks that also carried the 9 and 41 labels include Rebels, The Force Awakens, Rogue One, The Last Jedi, Resistance, Galaxy of Adventures, The Mandalorian, The Rise of Skywalker, Jedi Temple Challenge, The Bad Batch, The Book of Boba Fett, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, all having one or both of those classifications. On Tuesday this week, Jason Schreier of Bloomberg reported that the hotly anticipated remake of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is delayed indefinitely as developers at the Austin, Texas-based Asper Media try to figure out what comes next. The game was to be a remake of the 2003 fan favorite game that featured such iconic Legends characters as Bastila Shan, Darth Revan, HK-47, and more. Asper also abruptly fired the game's art director and design director earlier this month. In a series of meetings throughout July, Asper's 2 studio heads reportedly told employees that the project is on pause and that the company will look for new contracts and development opportunities. Knights of the Old Republic was to be one of the first modern Star Wars console games released outside of the Electronics Arts brand, which had previously held the exclusive licensing rights. That deal expires in 2023, opening the door for new Star Wars games from outside companies like Asper, Ubisoft Entertainment, and Quantic Dream. In a new article this week in Total Film Magazine, Mandalorian Season 3 lead actors Pedro Pascal and Katie Sackhoff spoke about where their characters are as the new season picks up. In footage released at Star Wars Celebration back in May, one of the things that was seen was what appeared to be Din Djarin leading a group of Mandalorian soldiers into battle. When asked about this moment, Pascal said, quote, "If he is stepping into a leadership position, he is reluctant to do so. I don't think that there's anything more interesting than a character being forced into discovering what they're capable of and who they are. That part has been really, really fun. Also, from my point of view, there's so many searchable ways to find the tonality of that. I just tried to achieve the subtleties of that kind of character development." End quote. In regards to where she is at the start of the new season, Katie Sackhoff said the following about her character, Bo-Katan. "Anytime you have a goal and you don't succeed, I think you reevaluate." Also, when asked about the scenes that she filmed with Grogu, as also seen in the celebration footage, Sackhoff said, quote, "It's funny because you always have to think about how you're interacting with Grogu. It's so specific, you have to make sure you're not doing anything that says something different. Every single thing, every single interaction with Grogu is very, very thought out. End quote. Mandalorian season 3 is scheduled to debut on Disney Plus in February of 2023. And finally, this week, the latest edition of Total Film Magazine also recently caught up with Andor star and lead actor Diego Luna to talk more about the process of getting back into character and what fans can expect in the upcoming series. During the interview, Luna points to a moment in Rogue One where Cassian tells Felicity Jones's Jyn Erso with a ferocious conviction that he's been in this fight since he was 6 years old. The actor continued by saying, quote, "That talks about a wounded man." He goes on to say, "We find him in a place where he's not aware of how capable he is of transforming or being part of change or executing such a sacrifice. But he is the man that comes out from fighting since he was 6 years old. He's a very interesting, dark, wounded person. You're not going to believe what he's capable of and what he does in Rogue One." End quote. The first 2 episodes of Andor debut on Disney Plus on Wednesday, August 31st. Well, that wraps it up for this week's Disturbances in the Force. Make sure to check out the ATG Cast podcast stream for weekly one-on-one interviews with the people behind the fandom. This Thursday, Around the Galaxy sits down for a new conversation with author and commentator Stephen Kent. Please subscribe for regular updates. Follow us on all your social media channels at ATGcast and visit our website at atgcast.com to keep up with us, find our merch, and get information about supporting the show as an ATG patron. Also, be sure to check out thepadathon.com for all the information about our charity event coming up on Saturday, September 22nd to benefit the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Thank you for listening, and may the Force be with you.
Always something happening every single week in Star Wars, even when we think it's a light week. It's always
the slowest news week we've probably had in 2 months, and I felt like I was talking for 10 minutes because there is always something going on.
Yeah.
And the stories are big. Like the KOTOR story is big, and I can't wait to get into that and see what our guest thinks about it, because we are going to talk about Star Wars video games tonight. But yeah, there's always something going on. So we did it, and we'll put it out. We'll put it in the podcast feed tomorrow.
Well, let's get our guest in here. We have tonight's guest is Mr. Kyle Newman. He is the creator of the love letter to Star Wars fans, Fanboys. He's also the creator of a brand new love letter to esports, One Up. And we're really excited and privileged to have him with us tonight. So it's my and Nick's privilege to introduce Mr. Kyle Newman. Kyle, thanks for joining us.
Of course. How are you guys? Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for being here. You know, I feel like we might be long lost brothers. I see you. I know you're from Jersey. You're wearing a Smiths shirt. You know, we got. I think we might have hung out.
Did you just become best friends?
Are you a big Smiths fan? If I could take one band to an island, it'd probably be the Smiths. Maybe. I mean, I love the Beatles. I love bands like that, but there's something about when I discovered the Smiths at that point in my life, and it doesn't ever diminish my love for them.
100%. It's funny because the Smiths, when I listen to the Smiths now as an older gentleman, it literally takes me back to the exact moments in my head, and it's interesting and
yeah,
not at all planned, but like this is what makes things like Fanboys so great is you have found a way to capture and bring people to those particular moments and live in those worlds that are, you know, we've moved beyond, but we still have so much love in. I mean, I say move beyond. Meanwhile, me and Nick are talking to you live from our, our studios full of Star Wars toys. But so tell us a little bit about your history, your background, and let's talk a little bit about Fanboys.
Well, I grew up in New Jersey, and in a family of 5 kids. My older brothers were into Star Wars, and I was one. It was my first memory really seeing Star Wars at a drive-in theater when I was, a year and a half, and I just knew all the action figure names before I could pronounce regular English words, and it was just fused with my life. It was like Star Wars was born, I was born, and that's been the trajectory. of my life. It got me into filmmaking. I went to NYU Film School, and I've just remained infatuated with the franchise. I was fortunate enough to develop and direct Fanboys and got to shoot at Skywalker Ranch. At the time, we were the only production to ever shoot there other than George's own stuff, and I think an Architectural Digest shoot. And we had to light Skywalker Ranch with car headlights because we didn't have the budget to light it properly. They turned on the Christmas lights that rim the house, and we were just low budget style lighting it with van high beams. So you do whatever you can. So that was an amazing time, and also got to sound the movie at Skywalker Ranch, and they did the mix, and Ernie Klein, who co-wrote Fanboys and also wrote Ready Player One, he got to come up there with me during the mix, and we were just like pinching each other, like, oh my God, we're here. And Lucasfilm was just so good to me. So over the years, I got to spend months and months at Skywalker Ranch. I would just go up there and stay for 10 days and get work done and just live on the ranch. It was pretty amazing. Things are different, under the Disney stewardship and how they utilize the ranch and stuff, but it's still an incredibly special place. And like you said, I try to make things that I'm passionate about. And even if it's not about like my life specifically, I try to pour as much of myself, be it through music or the way the characters talk or just the way scenes go, much of myself into what I do. And so Fanboys was something deeply personal to me, getting to make a love letter to fans and fandom. And it was an arduous journey and went through a lot of conflict in post-production, which it didn't need to, but ultimately I'm so glad the movie came out and fans discovered it and keep discovering it. And it means something special to fans. So that's a rewarding, totally rewarding experience, especially being such a diehard lover of it like I am. And with One Up, I got to do that with gaming. I know it's about esports, but I tried to imbue it with as many references to gaming history, to games from we grew up on, from pinball to Super Mario and Zelda and Ninja Turtles and all the good arcade machines and Battletoads. So when I got involved, it was very early on. It was just esports. And I was like, it's got to reference the lexicon of gaming and all the cool games that have come and all the different generations of people that love gaming, because you can't just speak to people right now. That's got to speak to people like me and you guys who probably played Nintendo or ColecoVision or went to the arcade and popped quarters in. Gaming's evolved, but it's still an important escape in a huge industry, and it means a lot to a lot of different people. So that was really the goal with the movie, is to connect to people and really say that gaming's for everyone.
Yeah. Sorry, Nick, I didn't mean
no, that's right.
But I think that's a cool message about One Up, is that it's not, it's funny because video games, I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old, and they are my 12-year-old girl. She plays Minecraft and Roblox and stuff like that. My son plays games that I probably shouldn't let him play, but I mean, come on, he's a 9-year-old boy. How
if we're being honest about your 9-year-old son, and this is a very tiny, quick story to tell. I think it was last weekend. Pete's 9-year-old son plays a lot of Fortnite. I have 2 14-year-olds, a 10-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And so I have 4 girls. My girls have started playing Fortnite in the last 3 or 4 months. And so we were playing split screen, me and my oldest sitting on the couch together, both with PlayStation controls, playing Fortnite. And a little thing popped up on the screen that said Fletzer joined. Well, Pete's son Jack had jumped in because I had played with him one other time, like a month and a half or 2 months ago. And I could hear him in the microphone going, "Dad, guess who I'm playing with?" Like yelling to Pete in the background.
That's hilarious.
But it was funny because our mics weren't working, and I'm playing with my daughter, and it's the 3 of us running around, and I could hear everything that Jack was saying. And he's like, "Why do they keep falling off of buildings and dying? Why do they keep I'm way too old to be playing Fortnite." But it was just hilarious, and having this pseudo intergenerational moment where we were all trying to connect over this video game that I'm terrible at.
I love that. See, I've got an 8-year-old and a 7-year-old and a 17-month-old. And the 17-month-old wants to watch them now. I'm like, oh God. But the other 2 got really hooked on it at the beginning of the pandemic. They busted out an old little Nintendo and got into Super Mario, and then got them Switches. And suddenly, my 8-year-old, he wanted to go back. At the time he was 6 and play every previous iteration of Super Mario and Zelda. He wanted the vintage ones, and so they're totally into it. But it's a lot of games, like you said, they probably shouldn't be playing yet. Not Fortnite yet, but there's other ones that are questionable. Or they'll do like the Roblox version of it, because Roblox has like customized versions of franchises that are not really ready for them, so they don't kind of know what's going on. Like, wait, whoa, we're not doing that one yet. But yeah, it's amazing watching the younger guys play. So I tried to put as many references in the movie to games they like Cuphead and Roblox, all these things that I think younger people, Five Nights at Freddy's, are into, and what's the other game with their rap battles, Friday Night Funkin'. So there's all these things there's little visual references to as well. Even though they're not like esports, it's still contemporary games that younger people are really into. And like you said, your girls, gaming is really like for guys and girls. There's been a lot of issues with that in the community. And before my movie even came out, it was the week before, and I looked online. I was like, how does the movie have a 1-star rating? No one's seen it yet. And there was Reddit directing people to go tank the movie's ratings on IMDb by just saying, this movie looks like it's going to suck because it says girls can be good gamers, and it's got good gamers. So go destroy this movie. So we had like 700 1-star reviews before the movie was even released to the public. It was before we even had a premiere. So it wasn't like people went to the premiere and saw it and didn't like it, let alone we didn't have 700 people at premiere.
They just did it on principle.
It's so unfortunate. It was just like, and then like, I guess that's why we made this movie is for people that are out there that love gaming. There's a lot of females and younger people that, get taken down by the older people who are very territorial, that they're not inclusive. And so people don't get discouraged. There are people like them out there. There's people that love gaming, no matter what their gender or age, and they should be welcome too. So that almost vindicated why it was important that we're saying this, but it's unfortunate that people went and savaged the film before they even saw it.
Yeah, I mean, we see it all the time in the Star Wars fandom and things like Comicsgate and things like that. It's amazing how if you give people an opportunity to prove the point you're trying to make, they jump right on it, and it's distressing. But it's also interesting, the point you were making too about video games. I think have always, when we were kids, certainly there was it was what the boys did. The girls didn't even think about it. Then they started to. It's I saw a Raven who's a friend of the show. She mentioned she loves Frogger and Burger Time, and Pitfall. And my wife, she's about 6-7 years younger than me. She was a big Pitfall fan, the Atari version and things. So, but games now. You have protagonists which are women. Like Horizon Zero Dawn is one of the coolest, strongest characters that I love playing her in the game. I mean, and what's really interesting too, and this is perhaps a good omen or a sign of things to come. My son, when he plays Fortnite, 22 hours a day, though it's not quite that bad, but is regular. He doesn't care if he's chosen a female skin or a male skin. He just, whatever one is cool, he just goes and plays, which I think is great, because I remember the only reason Lara Croft got made was because she was had a very large chest and a very small waist, and the boys could play as her and watch her on the screen. But that does not seem to be what's driving games. And did you, when you pitched the movie with the concept of the for those that aren't familiar yet with it, well, maybe give us the elevator speech on the movie for people who haven't seen.
It's about a group of it's collegiate level esports, and it's about a team of girls, and there's one girl named V, and she has early in the movie with her best friend Sloane quits the team she's got a scholarship on, because the guys are basically saying they're only there because they have certain body parts, and they decide to formulate their own team. And so it's a battle kind of between these two teams, where there's basically one spot left at the end of the year for the scholarships they're on. And one team ends up with most of the guys, and they form an all girls team. And it's collegiate level esports, but it's, like I said, it's really about a family and bonding and making a little clan. And I mean, the way I did a lot of writing on the movie too, I don't even look at it as like I'm writing girls, I'm writing people.
Right.
You know, when you're writing dialogue and you're writing jokes, and these are just people that love games. So you think about it like that. You're not necessarily having to put it through the lens of always going the female route, because girls can be crass and girls are actually more.
I was going to say
there's more vulgar than the guys. I'm like, is that what you were talking? Oh my god! Like you don't talk like this when you're with the guys. I'm like, no.
I have a wife and 4 daughters. Like, I experience all the crassness, all the bathroom humor, all the things I need. And that was one of the things I was going to say. As you're saying it, it's not a movie about a bunch of girls. It is about a family, because there is body humor, there is bathroom humor, there is, you know, these characters doing these things
for guys. Yeah, there's stuff in there for people that are older too. There's like, there's a superintendent at school, a dean, and he has no idea how he's supposed to interact with young people. He's on pins and needles, because anything he says feels like he could get canceled. He's going to lose his tenure. He's going to retire soon, and he feels like there's a gun to his face because he doesn't know how to respond, because everybody wants their own way. And I make fun of it because it should be made fun of. And the guys actually aren't the worst thing in it. I mean, the real antagonist in the film is self-belief for our main character, V. And the guys are an obstacle, but really, do you feel like you belong? And that's an internal thing for people. And I think that's important for girl gamers or anybody. If you want to get into something, it's, you know, don't just let someone be cast as the antagonist, but like, inside, are you doing what you should be doing to make sure you belong, and taking those steps, not just blaming other people. I think that's important too, but I do try to poke fun at the wokeness of the film as well. And I think that's important. So I did try to program jokes and everything in there for everybody. So it's not just a girls only movie. Definitely not, because I wouldn't want to watch that movie. You know, this is a movie that's got a little bit of everything, and I've seen it 500 times because I made it, and I still, every time I watch it, I actually enjoy it. I'm like, this is a good sign when you make something and you've lived with it for almost 2 years and you still smile and laugh and you're proud of it. That's a very good indication that you made something special. I'm really proud of all the people that worked tirelessly, because we made this movie for not a lot of money at the height of the pandemic. And it has 1,200 VFX shots in it, and 4 minutes of animation, and in all the game stuff was all green screened and put in later. So you wouldn't know it, but it's filled with visual effects, and even a lot of the stuff with Ruby Rose. I shot her on another continent against green screen and had to composite her into all the scenes she's in in the film.
Yep.
And you don't even realize it's VFX, but it was just the nature of shooting a movie during a pandemic, and Ruby couldn't make it to Canada, and I had to move a production over the border to Buffalo to capture her on footage and then find a way to composite her in with plates. Wow. So it was a crazy undertaking, and I'm very proud of all the behind the scenes stuff too that we had to overcome. But I do think,
and I want to say this
to
give you credit. I want to say this to give you credit, because I heard you say this in a different interview. The complications, you shot this during pandemic, you shot this early in pandemic, and there was so much going on. If I'm not mistaken, you shot this in 25 days. Is that right?
25 days.
25 days.
I honestly don't know how we did that. When I watch movies and people are like, oh, we did this movie in 20-something days, I'm like, oh, that's hard. I see what it is. I'm like, okay, it's a challenge. If someone told me they shot this movie in 25 days, I would absolutely not believe them. There are thousands of shots in the movie. And you're lucky on movies if you get 20 or 30 setups a day. We were doing 50 something.
You were doing 50.
And it was crazy. And people were like, how are you going to do this all in a day? I'm like, just put it on the schedule. We'll do it. And I work aggressively, and I shoot quickly and confidently with people, and we don't have to second guess. And I give people 1 or 2 takes, and unless there's a real technical issue, and people then get with it and they're prepared, and they don't like roll out of bed. Like, what are my lines? They come, we nail it. If you get it on the first take, we can try something different. Let's do improv. There's so much improv in the movie. And I gave people the platform to do that because they came prepared and were very serious about their characters. They owned it. They had good voices. They come in, they do what they have to do. We could then play. So it was like a well-oiled machine. And we didn't have, like a lot of movies have double cameras rolling. We only had 9 out of those 25 days with 2 cameras. So we were really nimble with a single camera covering sometimes 10 actors in a scene and just burning through it. So It was good to be directing again, and I felt like really confident after a couple days. Because anytime you start a project, you're like, "What am I doing here? Do I even know what I'm doing? What?" It's an imposter syndrome. Like, I don't know where do I
Sure.
put the camera? Oh my God, there's 1,000 options. Like, where's the best one? And you just start to feel it. It's intuitive, and you just know, okay, I should be here because this is going to yield the funniest two-shot with a physicality joke. I should be here to get this reaction. I need to be here so it can be about her being lost in this big space, as opposed to being, are you shooting, what do you like, what is the emotional feeling you want in each shot? And if you're just in touch with your script, you can move pretty quickly. So I am very proud of that. And it's crazy that we pulled this movie off. And the third act alone is just the amount of shots and editing. It's really an achievement. All the people who worked on post with me were just like nailing it. So I'm very thankful, and it's crazy that we made a movie at the height of COVID. We were one of the first movies back in at the that year in 2020, that early on in this scale shooting. So we just had to dive in and be a guinea pig and be like, well, what is it going to be like to shoot something like this? And
Sure.
we thankfully had no COVID the entire time and didn't get shut down, and we survived.
It's a lot of fun, and I watched it earlier this week because I knew you were coming on, and I had heard about it already, so I was interested in it. And it's just a fun movie, and it does, like you talked about, for guys that are all our ages, not guys and girls, whoever it is. One of the things that I love, and of course you do this with Fanboys, you do this again in One Up. You're so good with nostalgia, and not nostalgia in like that cheesy, like, oh, hey, remember that thing? Like, in a way that speaks to fans, whether you're a fan of Star Wars, whether you're a fan of video games. Ruby Rose's character, when she's trying to coach the team and she's trying to rally them together and she's bringing them together, she takes them to her garage or whatever it is behind her house, and she's got arcades and she's got pinball and she's got all the vintage consoles. You watch The Wizard with Fred Savage. Like, there's all these things that you tie into, and I'm watching it going, holy crap, like, this was my childhood. These were the things that I did. There's a key part in it, that revolves around the Game Boy and Battletoads. I've got a Game Boy on my desk in my podcast studio. Like, I love how well you do nostalgia, and I'd love to hear you talk just for a minute, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's these games that you've done, the movie with One Up, just how nostalgia influences certainly your work as a filmmaker, but also just who you are as a person. Like, it does speak to who we are as kids, and it takes us back, and it's kind of this vehicle to help relive our childhood. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate you noting that and feeling that, because that's the stuff I take particular care of. I want people to feel something. I want to transport them back to a time like that little scene like you're talking about. That had to be magical. I tempted with Last Starfighter score.
Yes.
I went to my composer. I was like, I want something that's like this, that has like, it was more melodic and throwback. They even call it, we're shooting this in the middle of a blizzard in Buffalo. I was like, oh, I guess we have to just shoot because there's no extra days. Like, let's just shoot in a blizzard. And there's a little line in there, if you hear it, she actually says, "You got a carriage house?" And that was like a reference to Fanboys, because Hutch lives in a carriage house. Not many people call their garage carriage house. And that puts some Star Wars references leaning into that scene, again, in that scene. And there's references to Contra, and the room is just loaded out with, they're playing
the cheat code.
They're playing GoldenEye, and that was something that was big at the end of the 90s that everyone was playing.
Yes.
And they play slappers only mode, and they're doing Guitar Hero, and like you said, Fred Savage and the Wizard. I know Fred Savage was like, oh, this would be funny to make a Fred Savage joke in here, and nobody knows what it is, but there's a generation of people that know Fred Savage and the Wizard, but these girls are like, what? So it's playing with like what people know, but they go like, all right, let's bond over it. And I think that's important. Like, nostalgia is great, but also when you can poke fun at it, and also when you can come at it with different levels of awareness. Like, it's Ruby. She's drunk, and she's like, the Wizard, and they're all like, what? But like, that's, to me, that's a funny way to look at nostalgia, rather than just, two people talking and pining over it. Wasn't it great that time we both did this? That's where you're like, okay, now it's just people talking. So I always try to find a new angle into it, or what makes it special. And if something doesn't feel emotional, or can't get to an emotional place, I don't care about it. I just don't. It's not interesting to me. So that's why music I listen to. People are always listening to happy music around me. I'm like, what is happy? Like, that's not really an emotion. Like, that's like, it's the equivalent of like, I stubbed my toe. Ow! That's happy. Like it happens, and like I like melancholy or things that linger and feel, and I think that ties into nostalgia. I think that's why I like the Smiths.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like music that says something or creates a portrait of a time or a place. You know, the Kinks used to do that well, and David Bowie does that well, and you know, the Beatles did that well. Otherwise, what am I listening to? You know, like
Right.
so it's got to be that way for me with a film. I want people to like it to be so specific. I think the best comedy is also specific.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted very specific jokes and very specific moments that, well, if they're making me smile, hopefully there's people out there that it also makes them smile, as opposed to the broadest, lowest common denominator stuff. You know, so it tends
Right.
to be more verbal and quick than just
Mm-hmm.
purely physical. And I try to do it with Fanboys and Barely Lethal. That's just, I'd rather that type of thing. For me, I respond to it better. So I guess I'm making movies for me and hoping that other
Mm-hmm.
people like them. But I am very cognizant and conscious of audience and potential audience reaction. And I just think if I lean into something, it's okay to get emotional. It's okay to get real. Fanboys obviously gets heavy and real when it needs to.
Sure.
And it gets ridiculous and slapstick and goofy at other times. But as long as you keep it grounded, you have this elastic base. So you can get really ridiculous, but the reality and the truth of the movie, you know there's something there. There's somebody dying. And in this, there's weight, there's stakes, and there's weight to it. And you
Mm-hmm.
can snap right back to it. And then you can get ridiculous again. And I think that elasticity is important. And that's something I try to, you know, explore and refine when I'm making a comedy. And that's not the only thing I ever want to make. Luckily, I've been able to
Sure.
work and I can make comedies, but my instincts and tastes are all different genres. But for comedy, I think good comedies, the ones I've watched throughout my life, always have a little bit of everything in them, you know? And I think it's
Yeah.
nice to be surprised by, you know, you can almost tear up, but then you're laughing two minutes later. I think that's it's a good combination if you can do that.
For
So it's
sure.
important for me.
Well, and I'd love to hit on something you said a second ago. It hit me like we're talking about nostalgia. You're talking about it's not just something that two people are pining over. It's not like, hey, don't we both remember this thing? You've got Ruby Rose's character who is older talking to a bunch of young kids. That spoke to me as a parent with two 14-year-olds, a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. We're in that mode of like, we went to the beach 2 weekends ago, spent the whole weekend there, and we listened to like 80s rock the whole time because my girls are into Marvel, they're into Guns N' Roses and all this stuff.
Nice.
And it's awesome. And that's that part of me as a parent that's like, I feel like I'm doing it right. But there have been so many other things where I'm like, this is a thing from my childhood. It's so awesome. Y'all should watch it. And they just look at me like, what are you talking about? Like, there's comedy in not everything has to land nostalgically, because what I think is awesome doesn't always translate. Now, I'm lucky. They love Back to the Future. They love Indiana Jones. They love Star Wars for the most part. Like, a lot of my big rocks have connected, but there's also that moment of just, like you said, in the movie, there are points where she was like, yeah, she's so excited. And they just look at her like, what are you even talking about? Like, I love that. That's a very fine line. And you said elasticity. Like, it's a real world, not just a straight to what you expect the joke to be. It lands in a different way. And I think that's really smart. And I love how you do that.
Thank you. Yeah. You brought up some movies I love, Back to the Future, Indiana Jones. We're on a Star Wars podcast. There's a certain warmth to those movies. You know what I mean?
Yes.
There's a nostalgia in all of them. You know, Indiana Jones was born out of nostalgia. George wanted to they couldn't make James Bond type movies. So like, let's make something else.
Right.
The serials we grew up on, and they did it in their own way. I think, Star Wars was obviously, George didn't get the rights to Flash Gordon. So he's like, I'm going to make something else. Let's do it my way. Like that's what you do. Like Back to the Future, it's like, you're going back into the past, and can you do something again? But you're obviously, there's a warmth to what the future is, and can you get back to it? And that's what you're trying to navigate that, but they wear their heart on their sleeves. I think that's another thing I like to put in my films is like, it doesn't matter if it's goofy or ridiculous, or it means something to you, so own it, and I think that's the passion that these girls, when playing video games, this game's abstract. I mean, I've watched this game a million times. I still like, it's so complicated. I had to strip out elements of it and simplify it into a capture the flag type game, because sometimes these games are 40 minutes long and I have 2 minutes of screen time real estate to like tell a match. And I wanted it, the way you experience the match is through the emotion on the actor's face and how they feel about it, or how silly it is, or how uplifting it is or how awful it is or, rewarding it is. It's about the actor, not what's happening in the game. So that was one of the real challenges. And I think that's what's key in all those movies we love. It's about, like, you love Marty. It's like, what is Marty feeling in Back to the Future? That tells you how you're supposed to feel about everything. So if you're anchored in that with Marty, or you're anchored in that in Star Wars, and you get it. It's so simple. I remember people were talking about Han Solo, and they're like, it's all comedy with Han Solo. I was like, I never looked at Han Solo as a comedic character.
Right.
I always looked at him as a guy he was sarcastic and gruff, and he said stuff that was like a little off kilter and a little weird, and he was impressed with himself. But I never thought he was out there like cracking jokes.
Right.
Everyone's like, well, Han Solo's a comedy. And you're like, what? And then when they made
he
Solo,
wasn't a class
like,
clown. He just happened to be funny as well as cool.
Yeah, you better watch yourself. You're gonna find yourself floating home, kid. That's not comedy, but you smile when he says some of this stuff that he blurts out. So I remember when they were making the Solo movie, and they were talking about how, like, those guys did a first the first stuff they were shooting was like Walk Hard, Dewey Cox story. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, they're like, it's full on comedy, and I'm like, what is going on here? So it's interesting, like, how people, when they think something's funny, how they feel about it. And there is that, like, that laugh, ha ha, gaggy stuff, but there is also like that fast talking dialogue, and you just go with it and it makes you smile. And I think it's, when I'm making a comedy, it's somewhere in the middle of, like, you catch the reference, cool. If you don't, you keep going, but they reacted a certain way, or they thought it was funny, or they didn't think it was funny. And then sometimes that's what's funny. So it's like finding that pace. And I like the movies to be really fast paced. And I think that's where I like the way George Lucas edits. And, for the other directors I worked with, it was always like, editing is everything. I like to, like, cut movies to the bone. Like, so you take everything out. Even if I loved it, I want to take it all out to the bare minimum, and then put back, and then populate it, like redecorate the Christmas tree with moments, as opposed to being like, oh, I really like this. I wanted it to work. Let me keep massaging it. I don't care what was in the script. I just look for the magic moments that are working, and then, like, let that be what this story is, and then go add as I need it. Because I don't want to watch a 2.5 hour movie about esports. I don't want to watch really a 2.5 hour movie about anything. Like, I want, like, the tightest, most paced cut with little bits of flourish here and there. I don't want to, like, overdo it. So I'm pretty proud of the pace with 1 Up 2. Once the movie gets rocking, it's pretty quick cruise to the finish line too.
Well, so you were talking a lot about pace and letting the actors kind of bring it together. I've watched Fanboys 100 times. It's one of those movies. I think Hello Greedo, who's another YouTuber, he described it perfectly. He's like, it's a movie that I can have on all the time, right? And
I love that.
It's been one of those. And as a Star Wars fan, and I, right in that age bracket, the whole thing. But then I have taken for granted the cast that you have, the people who you brought into that movie, who were all either, how many of them were first or second films? I mean, you had Seth Rogen and Kristen Bell and Dan Fogler and Jay Baruchel, and you had guys who were either about to be big or nobody. I mean, it's so funny. I didn't realize Seth Rogen until like the 5th or 6th time I watched it. And I was like, oh, that's right. Nobody had heard of these people.
How did you? That big, yeah.
How did you know? Like, I mean, it's one thing to, like, have, you had that one guy, but it's a cast of that one guy. How did you?
Yeah.
When you went through that process, and I know it's been 14 years or whatever since the movie, 13 years since it came out. How did you build that cast and then get them to work so well? Kristen Bell, I have to say, I know I asked a question, then I'm going to keep talking, but Kristen Bell is the perfect casting, because we all knew a Kristen Bell. There was that girl that was just a little too hot to be hanging out with the nerds that everybody loved, and she captured that personality just right. So, let me get back to the question. How did you know that was this the
Kristen,
right cast?
That was Kristen in real life. I was friends with Kristen, and she's awesome. And she wanted to do the movie. She was doing Veronica Mars at the time, and her team was like, "She's not going to do it, dude. She can't do the movie. She's too busy. She has to be on San Diego shooting, and you're in New Mexico." And she's like, dude, I'm doing your movie. Just don't cast anyone else. And they kept trying to make me cast other people. And finally, we just figured it out. And she would like work Veronica Mars 4 days, fly into New Mexico, shoot for 3 days. And we structured our whole schedule around her just because I wanted her to do it. You just know people, you get an instinct, you feel it. Like Dan Fogler, I saw his headshot and he was just this guy in suspenders. And he was like, and I was like, all right, that's Hutch. And they're like, who is this guy? He's never done a movie. I was like, well, he's on Broadway right now and he's amazing. And I'm like, I haven't even seen his show, but I'm telling you, I did this call with him. I flew to New York. I met him. I'm like, he's amazing. We have to get this guy. And they're like, no way. And then a week later, he wins a Tony on Broadway. And then like, oh, okay, now maybe we'll consider this guy. Oh, okay. It's like my instincts were feeling more vindicated. And he was fantastic. I mean, you watch it now and he's just killed it on The Offer, Paramount, The Making of the Godfather. He's playing Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh, yeah.
Genius. Yep. He's literally the best part of the Fantastic Beasts franchise as Jacob. It's a movie with all these magical people, and he's like the Muggle, and he's the most magical character on screen. I mean, honestly, he keeps that thing alive. He's such a gifted, funny actor. I'm glad to see him doing so well. But I just felt it. Chris Marquette, who played Linus, who was suffering cancer.
Yep.
He had done some other movies, and there's a depth to him, like both comedic and like I knew he could do the drama. And I was like, I need somebody that can like undercut his own cancer issue and still joke and roll with it, but at the same times when it needs to be heavy, get into the drama with his friends, and that you'd feel sympathetic for, this guy who was living life to the fullest. And that was Chris Marquette. And I was like, a lot of people auditioned and there was nobody better. And I love Sam Huntington. And Sam, I liked him for either of those roles, both him and Chris, just figuring out who they were going to be. Yeah. And Jay Baruchel too, he had done Almost Famous and he'd done one or two other small things, but he wasn't like a known quantity. And so that became like, they were perfect. Once they were all together in person, we were in New Mexico, we went weapon shopping at a flea market and they're all buying weapons and eating Arby's, and we did airsoft wars, and they just felt like real friends. And they were instantly and immediately friends for life. And we did a reunion, a Fanboys reunion during the pandemic. And that was awesome too. Everyone's still close. Everyone wants to even make more Fanboys. But guys like Seth Rogen, Seth wanted to be a part of it. We got him to do the movie. He plays 3 roles in Fanboys, and I think he did it for $5,000 just because he wanted to be in the movie. Now Seth Rogen probably makes $5 to $8 million, per job, And here we were. He did 3 roles for like $5K just because he loved the script and he was a great dude. He was friends with Jay, and Jay was like, Seth wants to be in the movie. He's my buddy. He's a comedian. I'm like, oh, I think I know him. Yeah, I met him once, and I was like, all right, he's in. So it was. Everyone wanted to be a part of it, and the people who were the most passionate, who really were serious about it, but also were respectable in their own careers and really serious about it. I took seriously and wanted them to be a part of that ever-growing Fanboys family, and everyone still adores the movie and still supports it, all the cast. And like I said, we do want to try and do we talked about a series, present day. We talked about doing a sequel. There was always talk about it. You never know what'll happen, but it's good to know that people still love it out there, and that the people who made it are all proud and passionate about it and willing to come back and do more in whatever format we can. So
now, you were obviously a Star Wars fan growing up, going into it. Were the rest of the cast, are they big Star Wars fans as well?
They were. I mean, Dan Fogler, they're all fanatics. All of them were Star Wars fans to different degrees. And they weren't all like action figure collectors. Like Fogler was really passionate, fanatical, and he would collect and buy toys and posters and stuff. And the other guys just loved it and knew it and respected it. So it was different ways people expressed their fandom, but it wasn't like, I want to pretend I'm going to fake my way through this. You see that with a lot of stuff. You see it with a lot of people like making big franchises. Like, I had a lunchbox of this thing once, and I what's it called again?
Right.
That's what's kind of sad, and I was blessed with people who actually loved the movies that we were talking about and inspired by to make the film. So these guys were, class act. And the same thing with One Up. I mean, I think this generation, these girls that I discovered for this movie, a lot of them out of Toronto, which no one's ever seen before, are awesome. Like just on the level of the guys I cast in Fanboys, like truly fantastic actors like DJ Mountsner and Madison Baines and Lolita Molina and Paris Barrels and Hari Neff. I mean, Hari Neff's blowing up right now. She's going to be in the new Barbie movie, and she was just on that spinoff of Sex and the City, and they're all so gifted, you know, they're all very fresh new voices that you'll probably hear more about in the next year. You know, when I made Barely Lethal, Haley Steinfeld had done one movie when she was 13, but she really hadn't done much else. Dove Cameron is huge right now, like probably like 60 million Instagram followers, and Sophie Turner and Thomas Mann suddenly did a bunch of things after that. I felt really proud of that cast too, because all of those people were nowhere near who or what they are now. You know, they all went on these amazing trajectories in terms of their career. And again, I felt very ahead of the curve in my casting. So I really feel like One Up is maybe the most special cast I put together. I really think these girls are awesome. And even the guys, the foils in this movie are just awesome.
And it's on Amazon Prime right now.
Yep.
It's
exclusively on Prime. So I made it with Lionsgate. And Lionsgate then partnered with Prime to distribute it. And Amazon owns Twitch, which is a huge video gaming platform. I think they felt there was great synergy there. And for me, it felt better than putting it out in the theater on limited screens or however many screens where it's just going to get crushed by some of these movies with huge marketing budgets. I mean, my 8-year-old was like, why is Thor everywhere? He's like, Dad, there's too many ads for Thor. He's like, it's on every time I click a video on YouTube, it's Thor. He's like, every bus stop, I see a poster everywhere. He's like, why don't they advertise Minecraft? I'm like, it's not how it works. But yes, you got to spend money to make money. And when you make a small movie that costs $4 million, no one's spending 40 on your advertising. You know, and you're up against a movie like Thor that is 150, 200 million on advertising. Where are people going to go in theaters? You know, they're not going to go to your independent movie about girl gamers. They're going to go see Thor with every Marvel superhero. So the reality is Amazon Prime was a much better portal, and I think could help us navigate. A lot of gamers are, you know, over there, and it's strange putting a movie out just on a streaming platform, but it's been awesome, and they've been so supportive. So it is exclusively Amazon Prime right now. I don't know the rest of the world. It's coming. I know it's in Australia right now. I think it's in theaters in Canada. Europe, I don't know all the details, but it's coming everywhere. So it's Lionsgate. It might probably come via Lionsgate in other countries. Theatrical. So domestically, though, it's just purely Prime. Yeah.
That's awesome. And it's a lot of fun. I encourage everybody that's watching. I encourage everybody that's going to listen next week when we put the audio out on the pod feed. Check out One Up. It's a fun movie. If you love video games, if you like just a good, fun movie, that's exactly what it is. It's so fun. We're going to get you out of here in just a few minutes, but I had another question kind of as a follow-up as we start to wrap you up. You talked about Fanboys. We've had a bunch of stuff about Fanboys. I'm so excited about that. You talked about, you know, maybe one day there could be a sequel. Maybe there could be something. I'm not holding you to that. That's not where my question's going. My question is, what is another Star Wars story that you'd love to tell? I'd love to hear what's something you'd like to do in the Star Wars universe or connected to Star Wars somehow that isn't a Fanboy sequel. That's an easy one. Everybody's wanting that.
We do want that, by the way. Don't.
Yeah, we do want that. But if we take the easy answer off the table, what's another Star Wars thing that Kyle would like to do?
I've got a folder with like 15 of them that are awesome. There's so many good ones. There was actually a book I was trying to get going back before Lucasfilm was sold to Disney. And there was a lot of interest. It would have been a standalone book. It would make a great standalone film. It's set hundreds of years before Phantom Menace, and it really doesn't tie into any characters we know. And this is obviously predates High Republic and all that. But I pitched this. I've gotten to know Hayden Christensen over the years. Fantastic dude, and I'm so glad he's back in the mix, because Star Wars deserves more Hayden Christensen and an underserviced Anakin Skywalker in the sequels. But pitched it to him, and he's like, "That's the best thing I've heard. Why are you not making this?" It's awesome, but it's about how the Sith power gets passed along under the noses of the Jedi in a very cool, contained. I'll say it's like a thriller, but it's a mystery. Inside a Sith temple with a small cast of characters. It's just not what you'd pick for a Star Wars story, but it's more like it's like Agatha Christie almost in a Star Wars framework. I'm just probably not giving you a good pitch of it without telling you what it is, but it's cool.
I'm hooked already.
There's another one. I have an idea for what I would do for a trilogy, and it is so far removed from what we know about Star Wars. Like you would watch this movie and it would feel like this amazing sci-fi fantasy adventure. It has to be fantasy. I think people forget Star Wars is fantasy. And there's a point in the movie where it'd be like Planet of the Apes. You're like, oh my God, this is Star Wars. What? This is a Star Wars film? Like it's like that. So it's not like it's just, hey, we got this song, and hey, kids, we got a droid that looks just like this droid you like, and hey, here's a lightsaber, and hey, they did this move, from that video game. It's like it's Star Wars in the way I think George would approach it, fresh, and just be like, I don't care what you think you're getting. Like, I'm gonna make my own thing. It's fresh, and it throws out the Jedi handbook. You don't know if you don't have someone teaching you, you're not gonna maybe learn those powers, those moves, those philosophies. It's all new. And the arc of the movie is that it's hundreds of years in the future. And you think that when you're watching the movie, it must be thousands of years in the past, but we're just in another place in the universe. And post Luke Skywalker, post Rey, post the balance of the Force, the balance is actually warped. And to the point where hundreds of years later, it's almost like you have to suppress and prevent Reys and Anakins and Kylos from coming and becoming supernovas that get damaged. So you actually have to control the people that could be dangerous. And in a way, by trying to control them, you're suppressing and it becomes dangerous. And without people like Luke's or anybody around, it's an oppressive, resistant thing. And somebody is born to break the balance. The Force produces someone to break the balance.
Oh, wow.
And is battling against the doctrine of a culture that's been misinterpreted by the people who balanced it, the Lukes and the people like that, thinking they're doing a good thing, but the Force needs to be broken open to be wild and free again. And that's like what it's about. It's a crazy story and it's a cool trilogy, but that's what it'd be. Like it's not all the stuff that's familiar, but it's entirely the feeling of Star Wars. And I think people forget that. Like, just because you're checking boxes doesn't mean you're giving me Star Wars.
Right.
It's alchemy. Star Wars is magical. You got to do something special. You can't just be like, we got the song, here's a ship. Kids know that. Like, I feel like they're just in the comic books. It's all paint by number. I want fresh. I want new. Well, and why are we not getting that?
Yeah, it's so funny that you say the phrase paint by number, because that's been in my head the whole time you were saying that. It's outside of that. And the other thing that I also heard was, I hear Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan saying, let go your conscious self. Let it not be the thing you expect it to be. Let it be feeling. Let it be gut. Turn your computer off and let's go and do something like what you're talking about, because at its core, you're going to go, oh yeah, that's definitely Star Wars, because it has become, and we've gotten a bunch of great stuff. Rebels is amazing. Mandalorian's amazing. But also we've got some pretty solid paint by number stuff along the way, because it checks the box of lightsaber, a bad guy, a hero, or whatever.
We're getting references. It's an overload of references, and we're getting a lot of things, which is like, people are like, oh, that episode was actually good. It should be good. It's Star Wars.
It shouldn't be the outlier. It should be good.
The best talent, the most money, the best streaming platform. It should be that should be the baseline. And just because, they got Luke right, and I love Mandalorian, they should have got Luke right. You have to get Luke right. How do you can't even entertain the idea of not getting Luke right.
It's not on the table to mess that up. The laurel
of success. You got to step, what do you want beyond that? And the Mandalorian is the shining example of what you can do right, I think, with Star Wars. And Filoni can do no wrong. He's the best guy and he's brilliant. So I would never disparage Dave. Dave's like a genius. Sure. But I think, across the platform, publishing, everything, there's a lot of great stuff out there. I think, look, I love Star Wars, and I'm reading Shadows of the Sith right now. I'm about to read, the new Princess Leia Han Solo book. I read everything. I watch everything. There's so much good. I'm just saying, if I want to take Star Wars back to the only franchise, the pinnacle of franchises, the Marvel Crusher,
Yep.
I want to
I love
start.
that.
I want to make people cheer again in audiences, and that people lining up down the block being like, "You will not believe what this movie just did." Not that it did what I expected it to do, and it was pretty well done. I wanted to. The effects have to be breaking ground. It can't just be good. Star Wars used to be the trendsetter for VFX. It used to be like Star Wars will blow your mind when you see it, and all of the money goes on screen to be innovative. Everything they were doing used to be innovative. Now it's just like get it out in time, you know. So I think on so many different levels there just needs to be an elevation. I think maybe that's why they're taking a break from the cinematic Star Wars, is to get things right again. And I didn't.
Sure.
I mean, my issues with Last Jedi were subversion of expectation, but without purpose. You know, if you want to, you could subvert the expected, but to what end? Why are you subverting? And that's what I this wouldn't be a subversion, what I think they need to do, but it does need to go into an unexpected place and purposefully, and not just for the sake of saying, well, we can't touch these characters anymore, so let's create a new era, but make it feel just like that era. That I don't think is necessarily, that's not the philosophy of Star Wars. I think that's not why George made these movies. They're just such an amalgamation of different influences, and now Star Wars is just influenced by itself. It's like an echo chamber.
Well, and you make an interesting point about the sort of subversion of expectation versus, and I think that's why Star Wars is now met with, no matter what comes out, we're going to see a huge backlash, whether it's warranted or not, because people, I mean, I went into to Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, and in my head I had written what was going to come, and it didn't happen the way I expected it to. And so I was disappointed. Same thing with, you know, when you get to the finale of Mandalorian or Boba Fett or something, and in your mind you're like, it's going to do this, and if it doesn't do that, because there's this ownership, there's this sort of, it's been with us for so long, we feel like we own it, and when it doesn't do what we want it to do, it bothers us. So yeah, so right, so then you have to break
people
that.
Disparage them. Yeah, people were upset because in that gap of 17 years, they were like, well, that's not what I imagined. You know, like, wait a second here. And I think because we author it in our minds, our imagination is always going to yield something more potent and powerful. And we're going to have nostalgia for our imagination more than we are for a new piece of content, you know, which is what happened in that instance. And, but that's the power of Star Wars. It's a very powerful franchise. The tool, wielding that universe is heavy. It means a lot to a lot of people, you know, and you have to do it in a very smart way, or else it blows up in your face. You know, but I love the prequels. I've always been a strong supporter of them because I felt George did something fresh and dynamic, and he didn't try to recreate. Everyone's like, well, where's the Han Solo in Phantom Menace? You're like, well, why would there be a Han Solo? Like, the galaxy hasn't been oppressed yet. He doesn't need to jury rig a ship. He hasn't. There's, what's he fighting? What's he rebelling against? He's a figure of rebellion. So like, it never made sense that like people were yearning for these things that were just retreads or regurgitations. Why are the ships all shiny and chrome? I was like, well, they haven't had a war for 1,000 years, you idiot. Like, what else are they going to look like? They're just going to beat them up themselves to, you know, like there's a reason George made all of those design choices. There's a reason he made all those casting choices. And you're talking about virgin birth and planets that look like entire cities and chosen one prophecies and the rules of two. Like, all this stuff were big ideas, and not that the sequels were void of it, but they were lacking in some. I mean, the greatest strength of Force Awakens was JJ's casting. He cast brilliant people. A lot of people are like, I don't like Rey and I don't like Kylo. I think they're amazing. Like, that's not my problem with the sequel trilogy. They're brilliant. I could watch those two all day. I actually love the way their story culminated. So it wasn't casting for me. It wasn't anything. I just think it was doing things almost like a disdain for what Star Wars was. It was like, I'm going to undermine what's here because I can, and I want to look cool doing it. And that's not healthy. And I hope they make really wise decisions moving forward with the people that they ingratiate into the storytelling mix there. But there's a lot of good stuff still. I mean, I could still pop those movies on and watch them. I like them, but I'm also a lifelong fan, and I'm also free to criticize them however I want. And
Sure.
I think I expect, you know, while I like them, I expected even better. You know, I guess maybe it's like, you know, that's fandom. You know, everyone's got to toughen up. Like, you know, I did expect better, but I could still tell you the things I love about those films.
Sure.
You know, and still watch
And
them
is that
obsessively.
Is that connected to, and this just hit me, of course, as you're talking, as a lifelong fan, but also as a filmmaker, are you able to separate those two as you watch something like a sequel trilogy? Are you able to find that disconnect, or do you get hung up in? Okay.
I saw Force Awakens, I think, 5 or 6 times in 24 hours. You know,
Sure.
I saw Last Jedi multiple times in one day, and I was like, "Am I seeing what I'm seeing here? Am I really seeing what I'm seeing here? Oh my god, I'm seeing it! Oh my god, I saw what I saw." Okay, it was like I gave it the time of day, and I immersed myself in it, and that wasn't my reactions weren't as a filmmaker. It was some of it was. I mean, some of it's like, okay, I get that. I don't get this, and some of it's like, you got to do what you got to do when you're making a movie to survive, or make the story make sense, or do what means something to you. You appreciate it. And making a Star Wars movie is probably the hardest job in the world. So all credit to the people that completed it. Of course, like it's a beautiful looking, well made movie. It's just a bad Star Wars movie.
Right.
That's my problem with it. Like, it's such a great film, and I love this guy as a filmmaker, but it's just not a good Star Wars movie, and it's not a good Chapter 8, unfortunately. And so I can separate, and I do that while I watch the streaming shows. You know, there's times where I've talked about stuff where I'm like, you know, I mean, you're watching just Kenobi. I love the show, but I'm like, I would never shoot Darth Vader with like a shaky cam this close, because that's not the power of Darth Vader as a character. Did George ever shoot him like that? Did Marquand ever shoot him like that? Did Kirshner shoot him like? They knew how to shoot him, you know. And you have to, like, he's an imposing presence, and he commands a room, and he moves at his own pace. He controls time. You don't need to shake the camera. It's just like strange choices, you know, and lots of close-ups, you know, which is not really a Star Wars cinematic thing. I mean, George used to shoot people like waist up or cowboy, and it was about like old style movie making. That's the way that he approached it, and it wasn't lots of POVs, and definitely wasn't overhead drone shots in the middle of lightsaber battles. So I know there's a new language that has to be incorporated into the Star Wars vernacular visually, but also if it's done purposefully. What is your purpose for doing a shot like that? Why? What's going on in Darth Vader that you're going to finally shoot him like that? You know, what's going on in the psychology of this character? What's broken at that point? What's motivated? So if it's coming from an emotional or dramatically motivated place, awesome. You know, so I can be critical like that on a filmmaker level. But mostly I just want to sit back and watch it and be like, there's Qui-Gon, and thank God Anakin's back, and, you know, like, at least somebody's brave enough to bring this guy back, you know. So that stuff's cool.
There's
cool when they do that.
I like your comment about the new way or the new language of telling stories. And, you know, I do think that Star Wars might benefit from sticking with what made it work from that perspective. And it's so great to hear you say to give those sort of insights. Like, I love the Kenobi series story. I loved the show a lot. But mentioning those things that you just did makes me realize that, and so as a filmmaker, when you watch it, I'm sure it's that sort of story was good, but I would have shot it differently, or I would have positioned it differently, or I would have paced it. As you know, we talked earlier about pacing and editing is so important, and that's also very much different styles. You could have 3 heavy metal bands play the same song, and it's going to be 3 different ways because of all the pieces that go into it. So I am dying. I want to see the Kyle Newman Star Wars trilogy now. That's what I'm going to start pushing for. That's what we need next. Forget make Solo 2 happen. Let's make Kyle Newman Star Wars happen.
We're probably not going to hold our breaths till that ever happens. But you know what I mean? When I criticize, it's because I know, just take an extra weekend, whoever's making it, you can make the show better. Just cut that little part out, change this, put a dialogue here on the back of this person's head to fix this. This is too on the nose. It almost like it just needs a little more love. And I just want to see it reach the pinnacle of perfect. You know, you watch Empire Strikes Back, it's just perfect. And they can do that. It's just like, I'm like, oh God, okay.
You're this close. You're right there.
And that's where the filmmaker side of it. You know, if you build houses and suddenly you're like, why do they have 2 driveways? Like, you only needed 1, and that could have been done to do this. You know what I mean? Like, it's just when you find inefficiencies or things that don't make sense, or things that, when it's structurally, something doesn't make sense. You're like, okay, it could be better. That's when like the filmmaker side comes out. Then there's very few times where it's more like raw logic, and you're like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
Did this person watch those other things? I don't know. There's very few times like that. Most of the times it's policed pretty well.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Kyle, this has been such a fun conversation. We are so honored that you took some time to join us tonight. I know you've got family inbound. You're spending some time at the beach, hopefully having a little bit of downtime after all the work that you're doing. I know you're working on music videos. One Up is out. You wrote a book several years ago, Dungeons and Dragons, Art and Arcana. Like you're all over the map. Before we get you out of here, before we get you back to your family and some time to relax, tell everybody where they can find you, anything you want to plug, whatever you've got going on.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter, Kyle, KYLE_Newman, NEWMAN. I have a Facebook fan page, always down to talk Star Wars, gaming, whatever. I do have a new music video out that I directed named Sin. It's guest starring Katy Perry, and that's called House with a View. That is an awesome summer song that's out right now. You watch on YouTube. I have 2 D&D books out. You mentioned one, Art and Arcana. The other one is Dungeons & Dragons Heroes Feast. It's the official Dungeons & Dragons cookbook. And that is, if you love Dungeons & Dragons and you love immersion, this is where to go. And I'm working on some follow-ups to both of these books. So I'm doing much more in the D&D space. I'm working on another new cool D&D project as well. So, and a new feature. There's a new movie that I'm casting right now too. So, but I would say watch One Up. If you like One Up, then give it a positive review, please. You don't have to give it a 10 or whatever. Just give it what you think is fair, but not a 1. At least watch the movie before you do. And
make it legit.
And hopefully you enjoy it. And if you enjoy it, just take an extra 5 seconds and go put a little review up, because that would be extremely helpful. Like I said, it's a small movie, and it was just unfortunate to watch it get attacked by angry gamer bro trolls. But I'm proud of the movie, and I think if you watch it and you especially if you like Fanboys, I think you're gonna really love it. So thank you guys for having me on. It was great to meet you guys.
Our pleasure.
You guys run a fun podcast. Just great, easy to converse with you guys. It's awesome talking the wars and everything else.
Well, awesome. Well, you're welcome back anytime you like.
Anytime.
And good luck with everything. And thank you so much for giving us your time. And go enjoy your weekend at the beach.
Thank you. Enjoy it, guys. Enjoy the weekend. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome.
Thank you, sir. See ya.
See ya.